Foreign is the most valuable luxury fashion brand in the world. Its CEO, Bernardino, is also the second wealthiest man on the planet, with a net worth of around $180 billion. Looking at the success of today, you would never guess that the company was started by a man who was homeless during his teenage years, had no education, and slept in a forest. Louis Vuitton is a true rags to riches story, but the company would also be subject of a hostile takeover, countless lawsuits, and a host of other controversies. This is the insane story of Louis Vuitton and how a tiny family business evolved into one of the most powerful brands in the world. Foreign was born in 1821 and grew up working on his family farm in France, in a small village called Ankai in the middle of nowhere. They had no electricity and no running water. Louis's father, Xavier, was a miller and farmer, whilst his mother, Corinne, made hats to help make some extra cash. There are no records showing that Louis ever received an education. The nearest school was in a village 6 miles away, and it's believed he worked full-time on the family farm without learning how to read or write. Louis would have been working in the fields every day, from dusk till dawn, just to make enough food to help feed his family. Needless to say, the Vuittons were struggling financially, and young Louis was born into a situation that should have doomed him from ever having a bright future. And then things got much worse. Louis's mother died when he was just 10 years old, and his father quickly remarried another woman. But Louis's new stepmother was incredibly controlling and manipulative towards him, and he constantly got into fights with her. And so, when he was just 13 years old, he ran away from home with plans to go to Paris. He slipped out in the middle of the night without even saying goodbye. There was just one problem. Paris was 225 miles away, and Louis had no money or food, so he was forced to walk along dirt roads. Most nights he slept in the woods with an empty stomach and just a cloak to keep him warm. Every time he ran into a new village, he would do odd jobs in exchange for food or coins. However, they have money left over for housing, so he continued to sleep in the woods, or wherever he could find shelter for the night. Through these various odd jobs, Louis was able to pick up skills from craftsmen, and he learned how to work with metal, stone, fabric, and wood. This collection of various skills would later transform his life. But at this rate, travel was incredibly slow. It took him 3 years to reach Paris. In Paris, Louis became an apprentice boxmaker, gaining a reputation among the upper class. His craftsmanship even caught the eye of the Empress of France, who appointed him as her personal boxmaker. But Louis saw a flaw in the era's luggage. Rounded leather tops made stacking impossible. He innovated with durable, water-resistant canvas, creating the first flat-top trunks. This revolutionary design was an immediate success. His stackable luggage became a must-have accessory for the wealthy, with orders coming from royalty as far as Egypt, marking the dawn of modern luggage. By 1859, Louis opened a new workshop with 20 employees to meet rising demand. As train and boat travel became accessible to more people, his customer base grew exponentially. High-quality luggage was no longer just for the rich. It seemed Louis had made it. But France was heading to war, and tragedy was about to strike once again. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 left Louis Vuitton's workshop in ruins. But instead of giving up, he rebuilt, opening a new shop in a wealthier part of Paris, closer to his affluent traveling customers. By 1872, he introduced a new striped canvas design that became incredibly popular. After Louis's death, his son Georges took over, expanding the brand globally. To combat counterfeits, in 1896, he introduced the now iconic LV monogram, honoring his father's initials, and a revolutionary new lock, making the trunks impossible for thieves to pick. By the year 1900, the company had 100 employees, and it continued to grow year after year. All of the employees were trained for a very long time in order to become expert boxmakers. Even to this day, Louis Vuitton employees trained for 18 months to 2 years before they're trusted to make one of the products on their own. The company also began to expand into a whole new line of products because of another fashion icon, Coco Chanel. In 1925, she commissioned a small dome-shaped handbag. At first, this was a design that she personally came up with, and it was just for her. However, it would go on to be mass-produced, and it was given the name Alma. This was massively successful, so Louis Vuitton decided to make more small leather bags like the Keeper, Speedy, and No. Before Louis Vuitton, handbags were often seen as quite inelegant and bulky, but the company played a big role in men being seen as much more fashionable. Georges Vuitton died in 1936, and the company was then passed over to his son, Gaston Louis. However, Gaston took over the company at a very difficult time, because in just a few years, France was once again heading to war. During World War II, contracts were cancelled, and Gaston was forced to shut down the Louis Vuitton factory. Paris was under siege again. The only way Gaston Vuitton could save the business was to collaborate with Nazi Germany. An author named Stephanie Bonvinci wrote a book called Louis Vuitton, a French saga. During her research of the company archives, she asked if she could see records from World War I/II. Almost immediately, the representatives from the company tried to avoid showing her the information. They claimed that all of the documents from 1930 to 1945 were destroyed in a fire. But after doing a lot of digging into other historic documents, Stephanie discovered that Louis Vuitton was able to open a glamorous ground floor shopfront in the hotel to park throughout the Nazi regime as they collaborated with them. Meanwhile, several other brands were forced to shut down because they refused to cooperate with the Nazis. Clearly, the company was ashamed of this part of their history, but they would argue Gaston did what he needed to do in order for the company to survive. Other fashion designers, like Coco Chanel, also collaborated with the Nazis in order to make sure her business in Paris was not destroyed. If it were not for their choice to work with the enemy, their brands likely would no longer be around today. Foreign passed away in 1970. His son-in-law, Henry Racamire, took over managing the Louis Vuitton brand. So we're now on to the fourth generation. But unlike his ancestors, Henry already had a lot of business experience from a company he'd run before. So when he took over Louis Vuitton, he was able to elevate the brand to a whole new level. Henry Racamire transformed Louis Vuitton into a corporation, taking it public in 1984 after sales skyrocketed. He then merged with drinks company Moet Hennessy, forming the luxury conglomerate LVMH. But a dispute led Henry to bring in investor Bernard Arnault, who secretly bought a majority stake. After a bitter court battle, Arnault gained control, ousting Henry and ending the Vuitton family's involvement. Facing a sales crash, Arnault revitalized the brand with designer collaborations, securing its future. Ultimately, Bernard's investment in Louis Vuitton paid off in a massive way. He is now the CEO of LVMH, and in 2021, Forbes officially dubbed him the richest man in the world, with a net worth of over $180 billion. Now, of course, as stock prices move, these rich list rankings change, but he's almost always in the top 5 richest people in the world. However, how of the wealthiest people like Bezos, Musk, Gates, Buffett? Bernardino is definitely the least known, as he prefers to stay out of spotlight. What we do know is, he has such a ruthless reputation in business. He is known as the Wolf in Kashmir, which is why today LVMH has over 70 different brands it owns. Through all of the acquisitions of mergers Bernard has pulled off, this one company owns so many of the most luxurious brands in the world. And yet it all started with a broke, homeless teenager. In the modern world, Louis Vuitton continued to expand its brand with new colorful styles that resonated with a younger audience. In 1997, Marc Jacobs became the creative director. He designed the first ready-to-wear line and also created the popular monogram Vernus line of handbags. Marc Jacobs also expanded LV into watches, jewelry, and sunglasses, although he eventually would move on from Louis Vuitton and come out with his own line of clothing and accessories. Of course, the company is not without its issues. Louis Vuitton has an entire team of lawyers searching for copyright infringement, and they don't hesitate to sue someone if they believe that they're copying the brand logo. They've even sued Google for search results and advertisements leading people to fake bags. Google won the case though, arguing they can't control what their users put on the internet. Louis Vuitton has also gone on to collaborate with brands like Supreme, which expanded their demographic like never before. Believe it or not though, Louis Vuitton actually sued Supreme as well for copying their logo until they realized how profitable a collaboration would be. Now, Louis Vuitton Supreme items resell for a small fortune. For example, the leather trunk is on sale for $125,000, or even an LV Supreme hoodie is over $5,000. Of course, the counterfeit problem Louis Vuitton had since the early days of the business is still an issue for the brand today. They estimate that every year they lose hundreds of millions of dollars to counterfeit versions of their products. However, even after being in business for 168 years, they don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Louis Vuitton continues to be a brand that many people aspire to wear, and it's a staple among the rich and famous. Currently, they are the #1 fashion brand in the entire world, valued at $39 billion. With more than 400 stores, you can find a Louis Vuitton in nearly every major city around the globe. But what do you think of Louis Vuitton? Do you think it's overpriced by all the hype? Or do you feel that the quality of the products justifies the massive price tag? Comment below, and then make sure you click on the next video in my series of luxury brands, which is the story of the orphan who built Rolex and answers the question, why is Rolex really so expensive? The Rolex video is the perfect video to watch after this one, so we'll hopefully see you there. Cheers.